Undertale, a game with a legacy like no other. It took the internet by storm, going from small indie game to being hailed as one of the most influential, innovative, and culturally impactful video games of the decade. Needless to say, Undertale is remembered as this landmark in online culture and indie game history. But does anyone actually remember Undertale, the game? Do people remember playing Undertale, or do they just remember the hype behind it? 2025 marks the game's 10-year anniversary, so I want to take a look back at Undertale and its legacy, and how its cultural impact affected that legacy. I want to know if Undertale is actually a good game. So without further ado, this is Undertale 10 years later. First things first, we cannot talk about Undertale without mentioning Toby Fox, the main developer and composer behind the game. For a notoriously private guy, Toby Fox actually has a pretty crazy digital footprint. From what I know, Toby doesn't hold all of his early works in very high regard, but I would be remiss to not at least mention his ROM hacking days of 2008 and his music compositions from 2009. And we don't actually have to go any deeper than this. Just understand that Toby Fox is incredibly talented, has been on the internet forever, and loves video games. After a successful Kickstarter campaign in 2013, and I do mean successful, it absolutely crushed the initial goal 10 times over, Undertale was set to release on September 15, 2015. Long ago, two races ruled over Earth, humans and monsters. One day, war broke out between the two races. After a long battle, the humans were victorious. They sealed the monsters underground with a magic spell. Many years later, Mount Ebit present day. Legends say that those who climb the mountain never return. And this is where our story begins. We wake up to find ourselves trapped in the underground where we meet Flowey. Despite being a seemingly cute and harmless flower, Flowey turns on us the second he has a chance, hammering home that this is the world of monsters. It's kill or be killed. But as he prepares to finish us off, we're saved by Toriel, who, in stark contrast to Flowey's perspective, is a kind-hearted and almost motherly monster. She's the guardian of these ruins, taking care of any humans that fall down, as we are not the first. Toriel walks us through the area, literally holding our hand as she guides us through our first few puzzles, and even comes to the rescue anytime we encounter hostile monsters. We do, however, quickly outgrow the need for Toriel's protection, going off on our own, and as we get into the first real encounters of the game, we can talk about one of the most important parts of Undertale. Undertale takes heavy inspiration from multiple different games and wraps them up in a pretty unique turn-based battle system. Offense takes inspiration from the Mario RPG games, implementing timed attacks for bonus damage. Defense takes the form of a Touhou-like bullet hell, where you need to dodge incoming projectiles. Like most RPGs, you could plow your way through enemies, defeating them at every turn, but more interesting is the mercy system. You can now carry out certain actions in order to subdue enemies and spare them, ending the fight without gaining levels or experience. Oftentimes, sparing enemies is more difficult than killing them, as different solutions force you to survive for longer, and the lack of XP prevents you from getting stronger yourself. The entire mechanic goes against traditional rules of RPGs, since you're now forced to think about every encounter, and battles are more so a tool used to help push the narrative forward. So much of Undertale is about subverting expectations, whether it be this battle system, the relationship between humans and monsters, or even the humor in the game. And at this point, you need to make a decision. How do you want to play Undertale? There are 2 ways to play. Okay, I lied. There are 3 ways to play. Okay, I lied again. There are 93 ways to play Undertale. You can kill everything in your path. You can spare everything. You could do a random combination of both. Whichever ending you get depends on what you do in almost every situation, and don't worry, I will cover everything in this video, but for now, we'll go over what's considered the true ending of the game, the pacifist route. As we make it to the end of the ruins, Toriel offers us a new life here with her. We'd have our own room, could eat butterscotch pie, and be a real family. She begs us to stay, explaining that any human who leaves the ruins is killed by Asgore, the king of monsters. But still, we're determined to leave. Now the only way forward is to show Toriel we're strong enough to survive on our own. We must defeat her. Being the first boss fight in the game, Toriel's weakness is much more difficult to figure out than any of the previous enemies. As you continue to spare her to no avail, you might think the correct option is to weaken her with attacks until she admits defeat. Don't do this. The game tricks you, purposefully killing her way too early, and you'll be kicking yourself for instantly ruining your run like I did. Instead, reset your game and continue to spare her until you finally reach an understanding. Once you leave the ruins, you learn that Undertale is just built different. If you accidentally killed Toriel on your first try, Flowey appears claiming he knows what you did. You used a save and tried again, but you're still a murderer. From here on out, we have to think carefully about our actions. Watch out for any mistakes because the game itself is watching our every move. Our next stop is Snowdin, where we meet the Skelebros, Papyrus, who hopes to capture and bring us to Asgore himself, and internet sensation Sans, who has successfully turned almost everything about himself into a meme. As we force our way through all their silly puzzles, I think it's time to talk about the humor and writing of this game. Undertale is filled with fourth wall breaks, anti-humor, and meta-storytelling, and this is met with a wide array of opinions. As you will soon come to realize, pretty much everything about Undertale has become a source of controversy online. For every person that thinks the dad jokes and the looks at camera moments are cute and funny, there's someone else who thinks it's offensively bad, and this style of writing clashes with the deep and serious story moments the game does have. But I don't really care. I think Undertale knows when to be serious and when to be fun. To be honest, it's pretty on brand for a game that was released in the true meme era of the internet, and regardless of your personal opinion on the humor in this game, it obviously works. Would Sans be as popular as he is now if he wasn't funny? Of course not. Eventually, as we befriend Papyrus, he allows us to pass while also giving us a sort of backwards warning that the captain of the Royal Guard and the king of all monsters are waiting up ahead. But we'll probably be alright. Right? We soon meet the cold and intimidating Undyne, who, despite Papyrus's awful best efforts, actively hunts us down throughout Waterfall. And as we traverse this area, specifically as we reach this room with its amazing background image, I want to talk about the art of Undertale. Undertale is not some AAA visual marvel of a game. Instead, the art style is intentionally simple, taking inspiration from the pixel art of early SNES games to create a feeling of comfort and nostalgia. Despite its simplicity, Undertale manages to create these visually stunning scenes along with its very cute and quirky character designs. But this brings me to not even a nitpick, just something I've noticed with most Undertale videos and appreciation posts I've seen online. Undertale is a small indie game that blew up more than anyone could have anticipated, and people deservedly credit Toby Fox for being able to create something this influential. People also bring up Temmie Chang, the main artistic assistant of Undertale, for her massive contribution to the game. But I've literally never seen anyone even mention the other incredibly talented people who worked on Undertale. Before I started doing research for this video, I literally thought Undertale was a one-man operation. So as we finish navigating Waterfall, I want to do something a little different and give some extra love to everyone who had a role in creating Undertale, no matter how small. Initiate the mid-game credits roll. After successfully evading Undyne, we finally arrive at Hotland, the last major area of the game. We team up with Alphys, a character who I will go more in-depth on later, to make it to the core, home of Asgore. The game really picks up the pace in these areas with more story, more characters, and the strongest enemies in the game. But before we reach the core center, there is something special we need to talk about.
Oh, yes.
Undertale's soundtrack is one of the best and most recognizable video game soundtracks of the last decade. The music fits perfectly for every character and mood, on top of every song being a straight bop that I added to my own real-life playlist. Here's some of my favorites, which, if you didn't catch it, is the entire soundtrack. With the mention of Undertale's music comes our first glimpse into the Undertale fandom. There's an entire subset of the Undertale community dedicated just to the game's music. There are hundreds to thousands of remixes, covers, and tributes for every song in the game. I think the fact that Toby composed the entire soundtrack by himself inspired so many people to try making their own music for the first time. While it's no surprise a game as popular and influential as Undertale has such a large community behind it, something unique about the Undertale music community, and pretty much every different part of the Undertale fandom, is that it's almost completely separate from the actual game. All these different aspects of Undertale have themselves become cultural phenomena that of course stem from a single game, but don't rely on it anymore. I know I was listening to the soundtrack for years before ever playing the game. It just goes to show how great the music or any other part of Undertale is. And with that, we've reached the center of the core, where we will finally face Asgore, the king of all monsters. Despite the game having a more happy and fun atmosphere up to this point, the more serious and emotional parts of the narrative are finally coming into focus. As we walk through the halls of this new home, the monsters begin sharing the story of Asgore and the first fallen human. Asgore took the human in as his own, and together with his wife Toriel and their son Asriel became a family. As the human fell ill and passed away, Asriel crossed the barrier so the human could see the golden flowers of their home village one last time. As other humans saw this happen, thinking Asriel had killed the child, they attacked him, beating him within an inch of his life, though Asriel refused to fight back. He fled, eventually making it back to the underground before turning to dust. Having lost 2 children in one night, Asgore declared he would kill any human that fell down to absorb their souls, break the barrier, and retake the surface so that monsters could be free. 6 humans have fallen, only 1 soul remains. As we reach the Judgment Hall, we face Sans, who judges our journey so far. He notes that you never gained any love or XP, which this whole time stood for level of violence and execution points. But that doesn't mean you're completely innocent or naive, just that you kept a certain tenderness in your heart. No matter the struggles or hardships you faced, you strived to do the right thing. You refused to hurt anyone. Even when you ran away, you did it with a smile. You never gained any love, but you gained love. You're about to face the greatest challenge of your entire journey. Your actions here will determine the fate of the entire world. If you refuse to fight, Asgore will take your soul and destroy humanity. But if you kill Asgore and go home, monsters will remain trapped underground. What will you do? As long as you hold on, as long as you do what's in your heart, I believe you can do the right thing. We're all counting on you, kid. Good luck. These final speeches put into perspective what Undertale is all about. The messages of non-violence, dealing with the consequences of your actions, your relationships with others both in games and real life, and how you interact in these different mediums. Everything in the game is coming to a close, but the greater conversation about video game violence, completionism, storytelling, and what you take away from these ideas has just begun. Like Sans says, we're about to face Asgore. We know his story, we know why he's doing this, and can you really blame him? Once we finally meet, we realize he's a gentle soul, but still he made his decision, and it's time we make ours. This might be a hot take, but I think thematically, Asgore is my favorite boss fight in the game. From the build-up of the entire game, with everyone believing in him and his kindness, that we can change him, hearing the tragedy of his family, seeing his new home the same as before but now devoid of color and life, and finally as he destroys the mercy button, almost as if for his own sake. We know he doesn't want to do this, but he has to, and he can't let himself be swayed. Our only option now is to fight. As he's on the brink of defeat, Asgore surrenders himself so that we can return to the human world. But after everything we've been through, we still have the determination to show him mercy. Using that small moment of kindness, Flowey returns and absorbs the 6 human souls to take control of the game. He turns into this nightmarish Photoshop monster, sends a never-ending, even more chaotic bullet storm at us, uses save states and loads to keep everything going for eternity, and has now become this disturbing, godlike, invincible force. We might not have any hope left, but just like before, we have determination. The 6 human souls, as if they were inspired by our own pure heart, refuse to yield. One by one, they destabilize Flowey, dropping his defense and healing us in the process. This fight is so fun and epic with all the chaos happening around you. I wish I recorded my original playthrough of the game, because during the fight I thought the game didn't let you die, but apparently on the final stretch, as I fell to 1 HP, I just locked in, landing the final blow, making it a completely deathless first playthrough of Undertale. Once we defeat Photoshop Flowey, there's only one thing left to do. After everything you've been through, you're still you. We spare Flowey, who can't understand, and runs away promising revenge. But with that, Undertale abruptly ends, giving us the neutral ending. Honestly, it's a bit awkward, but if you did everything correctly, sparing every monster, we now have the option of going for the true ending. When you reload Undertale, the world itself opens up, allowing you to complete one last mission before returning to the throne room to confront Asgore once again. We need to build strong bonds with Papyrus, Undyne, and Alphys, then explore the true lab to learn the truth behind determination. And as we go through this somewhat dark and mysterious final area, I think it's finally time to talk about the most important part of Undertale. The characters of Undertale are one of the main driving forces behind the game's story and one of the biggest reasons Undertale became so popular. These characters are beautifully complex and relatable with deep backstories and personalities. But looking back on everything, is any of that actually true? I loved most of the characters in this game, but surprisingly, I felt they were kind of basic and in certain cases extremely unlikable. Characters like Papyrus and Toriel, who I felt had potential, didn't get enough screen time to explore them as much as I thought they should. Characters like Sans, who is generally more interesting and gets the attention he deserves, ends up being a kind of obvious worn-out trope of haha funny, unassuming character that's actually a super serious OP badass. Characters like Muffet or even Metaton, who are immensely popular yet minor characters, feel awkwardly shoehorned in during an otherwise pretty focused part of the story. And finally, a flaw that affects pretty much every character is that the game itself is kinda small. A full playthrough is only a few hours long after all. You don't actually spend that much time with these characters, but that almost ends up being one of Undertale's strengths. So much of the characters' appeals come from their mystique, their implied backstory, and how fans can project their own feelings and ideas onto them and build them up even more. To Undertale's credit, the game is written so perfectly for this. Even someone like me who comparatively doesn't get as attached to games like Undertale, I still had my favorite characters. I wouldn't say they're that much stronger than the ones previously mentioned, but I did go out on my own to learn, read, and listen as much about them as possible, and it made me love them even more. Undertale is just a game that encourages this type of engagement. Once you're hooked, you're in it for the long haul. There is, however, one character that no matter how I tried, I could not get myself to appreciate. I hate Alphys for a couple of reasons. I do think her personality is annoying, but I don't want to be mean to anyone that thinks she's relatable, so instead I'm gonna focus on her actions. In our first playthrough, Alphys is basically in control of every puzzle in Hotland, but fakes all these obstacles, making us jump through a bunch of hoops to get to Metaton. It's then exposed that she set everything up so she could save the day in the end, putting us in actual danger just so we would like her. In the True Lab, we learn about her failed experiments, injecting fallen monsters with determination, turning them into zombified mutant amalgamates, then keeping them as prisoners. Alphys plans to never come clean until we intervene, and her dialogue in this scene and throughout the entire game makes me feel like everything's all about her. I couldn't tell anyone about this, my experiments didn't work, I'm such a failure. And later, now I can finally tell everyone because I'm gonna believe in myself. No, Alphys, this is not about your low self-esteem, this is about how you fused together a bunch of fallen monsters, kept them captive in your basement, and forced them to live a painful existence as you fed them potato chips every other week. You smell, and you're dumb, and you need to face the consequences of your actions, which there are none, by the way. Every character in Undertale has their own flaws. They're not black and white, which is a good thing for so many different reasons, but how forgiving am I supposed to be of a character like Alphys when her reasoning for doing all this terrible stuff is that she's insecure? I don't know, the True Lab and Alphys as a whole stand out as the only parts of Undertale I don't really vibe with, and it's even worse that she's one of the characters that gets multiple story arcs when there are others who deserve it so much more. But to each their own. Once we complete all the prerequisites, we're sent to the throne room for the true finale of Undertale. Things play out differently this time as all our new friends rush into the throne room to stop the fighting. The bonds we share with everyone are enough to convince Asgore that peace is the right choice, and we live happily ever after. Yeah, Flowey is back to end us once and for all, but before he can land the final blow, all of our friends swoop in to save us. Every monster we've met along the way comes in to help. But again, this is all part of Flowey's plan. Yes, Flowey is Asriel Dreamer. With his dust scattered over the garden, Asriel was revived after one of those flowers was injected with determination. However, sentient as he may be, he no longer has his own soul. Asriel was alone, unable to love, seeking something to make him feel again. And now that he's found that in you, he refuses to let go. Everything about this battle is just so perfect, from the colors, the action, the music. Oh my god, the music! This time, we're the ones who need to save our friends, calling out to their souls one by one to help them regain their senses. No matter how much pressure Asriel puts on us, we refuse to fall, too determined to save everyone. And in the end, there's only one person left to save. We call out to Asriel himself, comforting him, forgiving him. All he wanted was his best friend back. All he wanted was to be loved again. After feeling that love and determination of every soul inside him, Asriel uses his remaining power to break the barrier to the human world, sacrificing himself so that monsters can be free. When we wake up, everything is seemingly back to normal, with all the monsters losing their memory of what just happened. With the barrier open, the monsters of the underground can finally reach the surface, and we go off with our new family to live in the sunlight happily ever after. And that's the true pacifist ending of Undertale. There's a couple of things I didn't touch on throughout that story recap, most notably the significance of naming our character and the reveal that it's actually the name of the first fallen human, and all the weird theories and lore behind that. It's just at a weird spot in the ending where I didn't want to take away from the moment and go in depth on one more of the countless messages and themes and mysteries behind Undertale, but as always, I do recommend you actually play the game for yourself, nudge nudge wink wink, and find or even change your own interpretations of the story. Now then, in the beginning of the video, I mentioned the 90 unique neutral endings of Undertale. You can spare, fight, and befriend all these different combinations of enemies and make different decisions throughout the game to slightly change the neutral outcome. It's something that's never really remembered in the mainstream due to how popular and significant the main routes are. It is, however, an impressive feat to think of and implement all these different variations, and despite these endings being relatively insignificant to Undertale's legacy, they definitely deserve a mention. There is, however, one alternate ending that has arguably impacted Undertale's legacy even more than the true ending. The Genocide Route is interesting, specifically due to its reputation among the fandom, and what I learned about Undertale fans throughout this experience is that a surprisingly large number of them have never played Undertale, and that's not necessarily a bad thing. It's amazing how Undertale's appeal goes beyond just the gameplay, but if you don't play Undertale, you'll never truly understand what it's all about. Before playing it myself, I came to know the Genocide Route as this incredibly challenging, exciting, and edgy downfall of ourselves and the characters. But the Genocide Route, by design, is almost the exact opposite. It's kind of a boring, soulless playthrough of the game. And that's really the point. You're not here because you want to connect with these characters and their stories. You already did that. You're here because you want to fight Sans. You want to see the secret ending. You're here for completion's sake. That's why it's almost genius the way this route plays out. There's no more puzzles or dialogue, towns are abandoned, and the path forward is streamlined. Most of your playthrough, you'll be walking around waiting to hit your kill quota. And it does take a long time to do that, as enemies become more scarce the more of them you defeat. You hunt them to extinction. It not only makes sense to the in-game lore, but also hammers home the point of it all. Grinding like this is needless violence. You stopped thinking about the consequences of your actions a long time ago. Now it's just a game to you. Of course, everything leads up to the Sans fight, a notoriously challenging and epic final boss. But is it really worth it? Sitting there mindlessly mashing the A button for hours on end just to say you did it? Personally, I'm not really a big fan of these kinds of ridiculous challenge bosses in video games. Was I going to sit through hours of attempts just so I can say, I beat Sans? Yo, where are all the monsters? Okay, is there actually no boss fights in this? Yo, okay, this song actually goes hard. Oh shit! Okay, this one's actually crazy. God, this thing is so ugly. Dude, these arrows are too hard! Bro, 40? Okay, this is actually the worst part of the game. Snore! No, I am out of healing. Oh, thank God. Easy first try, Sans. Oh my God, this one's not even worth continuing. Bro, the bones! Fuck, 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 fuck! Bro, I've been in this box for 10 minutes. What am I supposed to do? In the end, it wasn't that bad. Undying the Undying only took me a dozen tries, and I beat Sans in under 30 minutes. I'm not gonna say the challenge was overhyped or anything, I'll just chalk it up to the game being incredibly well balanced and me being a bit of a gamer. At the end of the Genocide Route, having no more connection with the world and its people, we erased the entire game. Undertale.exe crashes, and from this point on, whenever you load back in, you'll be stuck on a black screen. The world was truly destroyed. You can still go back and replay Undertale though. However, from this point on, your game will be forever changed. After waiting 10 minutes on the black screen, you can offer up your soul in order to recreate the world you once abandoned. From here on out, every playthrough of Undertale will be just as soulless as your Genocide run. Not in terms of actual gameplay, of course. You can still do an unaltered true pacifist playthrough if you'd like, but the ending will show you did not get your soul back. The game knows what you did. It knows you're just here for more entertainment, that you didn't care in the first place. And that is how our journey through Undertale the game ends. But as I've mentioned multiple times throughout this video, Undertale is more than a game. Let's talk about Undertale's cultural impact and how it's affected both the gameplay and its legacy. Whether or not you've played the game, if you've been on the internet at all in the past 10 years, you probably know about Undertale in some form or capacity. From the thousands of forum posts about the game, to the countless video essays, fan animations, and song remixes, you could not get away from Undertale. And that level of popularity was unexpected. Undertale's astronomical rise happened almost overnight as the most popular Let's Players quickly latched onto the game, and game theories began to appear soon after. Looking back, Undertale is one of the games that helped MatPat and game theory skyrocket to YouTube juggernaut status. Of course, not to the level of Five Nights at Freddy's per se, but it's hard to imagine game theory and internet culture as it stands today without Undertale. Hell, the Pope owns a copy of Undertale. The Pope! This guy doesn't even know what a Steam key is, yet here he is clapping to Megalovania in the Vatican. What the hell is going on here? How did Undertale become this powerful? When it comes to the theory and lore aspect, I actually respect Undertale a lot more than other games. A lot of indie games that came out in the last decade started doing what's been coined as theory baiting, making their lore so weird and convoluted that it's practically begging people to make videos about them. Undertale, of course, has so much hidden lore and deep backstories to discuss, but the game doesn't seem like it was made with the intent of getting as many views and dollars as possible. It's very much a love letter to all the games that inspired it. It feels authentic. People latched onto the game because they genuinely liked it, and there's so many different things they liked. There's a community focused on fan animations, with countless YouTube videos each receiving tens of millions of views. The fan game community is one of the most active modding communities in existence. There are literally fan games with lore based on other fan games, based on other fan games based on Undertale. It's insane how deep the iceberg goes. Ironically, the smallest part of the fandom might be fans of the actual gameplay of Undertale, but for a game that's so heavily focused on emotion and relatability of its characters and story, that's okay. It's not all fun in games though. With popularity, especially that of a game like Undertale, with a very passionate and outspoken, sometimes annoying fanbase, comes its fair share of haters. There is a subset of the Undertale community that exists just to hate on Undertale. While valid criticisms of the game do occur, most of the time the hate is against the fandom itself. And here is where I unfortunately have to admit that up until recently, I was one of those haters. If you were to ask me even a few months ago, I would have told you Undertale was a boring RPG with cringe characters and effortless battle mechanics that could never come close to the games that inspired it. Flash forward to me actually playing Undertale and forging a real opinion, and obviously I was wrong. I unfairly hated Undertale because it was so popular. However, I do have to acknowledge my frustration with Undertale and its popularity because I predicted certain issues would remain after I played the game, and I was right. This may be a controversial opinion, but I do think the sheer prominence of Undertale has been detrimental to the game's legacy, but not in the way you might think. I don't think the Undertale fandom is particularly cringe, nor do I still feel the need to hate on it due to its popularity, but one problem I do have with Undertale's cultural relevance is that you could not escape it. Before I ever thought about playing Undertale, I already knew almost everything about the game. I knew almost everything everyone else thought about the game. For any form of media, spoilers are obviously bad, but for a game like Undertale that so heavily relies on its characters, the story, and subversion of expectation, spoilers are a death sentence. I didn't get to learn how to play the game. I didn't get to decide which path to walk down. I knew from the beginning, don't kill any monsters, make sure to befriend these people. The Sans fight exists. Even 10 years later, now that I know how to better navigate the internet as a whole, it still isn't possible for me to get the correct experience of Undertale anymore. And this is probably the case for most people that still haven't played the game. To Undertale's credit, my experience playing was not devoid of emotion or understanding. I still connected with the story, and the game was able to get its point across in a touching way. I had an amazing time, and that's almost more impressive given the circumstances. There is, however, one more issue I had with how the internet treated Undertale over the years. Undertale has a certain reputation, and with that reputation comes high expectations. Expectations that, frankly, I don't think any game could have lived up to. Less than a year after its release, Undertale had won GameFAQ's Best Game Ever contest, beating out games like Zelda, Mario, and so many of the games that directly inspired it. To even be in the conversation with these games so early in Undertale's lifespan is incredible. But the conversation around Undertale makes it seem like the game is something it's not. I wouldn't say Undertale is this grand, life-changing experience on its own. The game itself is surprisingly small. As much as I love them, I wouldn't call many of the characters that deep or complex. I think so much of the discussion about Undertale over the years was what you should think about the game, rather than what you actually thought about it. And during Undertale's peak in popularity, this idea was even more prevalent. I'm being a little nitpicky right now, but I say all this to hammer home that I wasn't able to have a true Undertale experience, free from bias, whether I wanted to or not. Like I said, I don't even know if that's possible anymore. That's why despite loving the game now, I still have a strained outlook on Undertale's popularity. Even Toby Fox's perspective on this issue is interesting. Retrospective on Undertale's popularity. Though it was released almost a year ago, I have the same opinion of it. It's about an 8 out of 10 niche RPG game. If you like the characters and the humor, you'll probably like it and forgive it for its flaws. If you don't, you'll probably hate it. Not only did I not expect this level of popularity, but initially, I was afraid of it. I didn't want Undertale to become tiring for people, or become spoiled before anyone even got a chance to play it. But the game became very popular, unavoidable even. At the height of its popularity, not liking the game felt like a cardinal sin to many fans online. In reaction to these circumstances, others began actively hating the game, creating an endless whirlwind of discourse. Every time it seemed to die down, something revived it, such as the GameFAQs contest, the award shows, bizarre theory videos, and so on. At times, I wished I had a way to quell the attention. At the same time, countless wonderful things were happening. People told me the game helped them through a difficult part of their life. Others told me that the game had made them laugh or cry or say, "I want to be kinder." Many young kids told me they wanted to create games or music because of it. So ultimately, it's a good thing that the game reached so many people, and I'm very thankful to everyone that supported it and everyone that helped me make it. Thank you. And 10 years later, that's kinda where I stand on this topic. Despite how in-your-face it once was, it's genuinely amazing that Undertale has become so much more than a game for so many people. It took the internet by storm in a way I don't think any game has since, and brought so many different communities together. Funny enough, just a few days before I released this video, Toby Fox actually hosted a small sort of 10-year anniversary event where you could share your favorite memories of Undertale. I just hope somewhere in that ocean of memes and theories that Undertale is also remembered for what it was in the first place. Just a great game. So what score am I giving Undertale? Well, as Toby Fox would put it, 8 out of 10 niche RPG game. But I'll take it a step further. Undertale is able to draw from so many different inspirations to create a type of gameplay that feels so unique, with a story and humor that most of the time hits in all the right places. Nowadays, I don't think Undertale is that niche. It's a fun little romp that has something for everyone, whether it be challenging fights, interesting characters, or just plain old memes. 9 out of 10. Let me know what you guys think. Is Undertale actually the greatest game ever, or are you still a hater in the year 2025? Thanks for watching, peace.